Welcome to our fifth and final segment on this.
When we're starting and we're laughing already.
There are two rules on the show. This is Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small, an Indianapolis attorney. I'm co-host with Paul Ogden, also an Indianapolis attorney. Jon Easter is a teacher. Indy Democrat .blogspot.com. Matt Stone, Indy student blog, former Libertarian City-County Council candidate here in Indianapolis. Libertarian Party. And we have two rules on this show. One is you don't talk over each other, and two, you don't wear stripes. Oh, and three, do not write on the walls, as writing on the walls requires scrubbing to remove.
Let's do a party five.
Anyways,
okay,
I'm too young for that.
I was looking at the walls. I was saying, did somebody try that?
We've been talking about the 2012 elections. This is our last segment. We can't do credit to a discussion of the presidential race, but we're going to talk about aspects of it here.
But nobody else ever is giving themselves doing proper credit either.
Well, okay. First of all, we've got President Barack Obama is obviously the Democratic Party's choice by default. We have a bunch of people from the Republican Party, but we've got this process. First of all, we're trying to guess who's where in what ranking. And last night, the Iowa caucus percentages, they were talking about the Des Moines Register is releasing its figures tonight at 7 o'clock. And that's like some important thing. First of all, what's the value of polling? Because as I understand now, it's so expensive to do polls. And people, it's questionable the value and validity of polls because 25% of people are cell phone only. Landlines, I can tell you as a lawyer, a lot of people who have landlines because they're on house arrest or home detention. So there are different parameters of people who have landlines. What's that say about how can we say what's going on with the percentages on candidates?
So bigger polling organizations like Gallup have supposedly corrected their methodology to factor in cell phones and people who just don't have phones altogether. But the small organizations, the more partisan polling organizations, put stuff like PPP, Insider Advantage, I'm blanking on the other one that's often quoted, so they have much less reliable. You'll notice something like, I think Insider Advantage put Santorum was the first poll that had the Santorum surge, while CNN and Gallup still had Santorum down 8-9%.
But what does that say about these campaigns that candidates are running? The life's blood is polling and knowing what you're doing in certain areas. So doesn't this mean that all of a sudden you're putting more of a premium on big money coming into a campaign?
I think this close to the election, well, in this case the Iowa caucuses, polling really seems to hurt people more than it helps because you're giving people less time to decide and people are just more like, well, I want to go with the winner. But in this case, there's no clear winner.
But I'm not talking about the public knowing about the polls. I'm talking about the campaigns themselves running polls. Because those campaigns have private polls that they run. And if you have more money to have better or more accurate or more precise polling so you can know where your strengths and weaknesses are, that really benefits your campaign.
And you want to do what's called a tracking poll, which you do a smaller sample, but you do it like every night. And it shows whether a particular message is working
with the same people, like with the samples,
They about every 3 or 4 days they start going back to the same people.
Yeah.
It's the same pool of people, and to see whether their message is working, that's the most important thing.
Well, and one thing we've seen in the tracking polls is as the Republicans have been finding it out, Barack Obama's numbers are getting stronger. I mean, he's up to close to 50% again. Approval, that's in the Gallup tracking poll. So, when you look at things like that, you wonder, is that really what's going on in the country? Because I know there's still a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that aren't real pleased with the president. And, you kind of heard it in your intro there for this segment, that there are a lot of people on the far left that aren't really happy with President Obama.
I think we should have
people on the far right that aren't really. So, once again, he's putting that message to that undecided voter, and he's going to have more money than pretty much any presidential candidate has ever had.
The money's not going to be a problem
target
for
specific
President Obama.
Yeah, he can open up he could once again do a 50-state strategy, even in states that he's not going to win, and he will never win in a billion years, but that will bring in Democratic voters. And that's, I think, his greatest legacy is that he's brought people to the process that maybe weren't in 2008, and he may do it again in 2012 by the other way. I don't know.
We have, the Iowa caucuses are
January 3rd.
January 3rd, and our primary here isn't until like May 5th or something. By then, Indiana will be moot as far as the presidential primary for the Republican Party.
Well, Mitt Romney, if you look at his campaign people on in media interviews, they're looking at similar to what Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were doing in 2008. They're thinking of this thing far out. They're not too worried about winning every single state right away like Mitt Romney was in 2008. He wanted to win Iowa and New Hampshire right off the bat. And he didn't win Iowa, he didn't win New Hampshire. And he spent millions and millions and millions of dollars in Iowa.
Well, but here's my question is, why is it that we have three states, Iowa, New Hampshire, and then South Carolina, essentially setting, and I was listening to people last night saying, well, they don't represent a cross-section of the United States. No state represents a cross-section of the United States. Mm-hmm. What you're going to find, like Muncie, Indiana, was Middletown, USA, for that study in the 1950s.
Right.
I mean, no place is the cross-section of the United States.
But it allows candidates, especially those with little finances, who are not part of establishment, to basically camp out in a state and garner support that way. Now, Iowa and New Hampshire both have, they're both mostly white, by far. Iowa's Republicans are a bit more right than most Republicans, and their liberals are a bit more left than most Democrats. And New Hampshire has this odd little libertarian streak with the Free State Project and stuff like that, live free or die and stuff like that. But they're small enough so that a candidate like Bill Clinton or like Rick Santorum or John Huntsman to just camp out in one state and garner support that way, and arguably they can gain traction. Because if you have like a national primary all on the same day, then our candidates are just going to be Mitt Romney or Hillary Clinton, or people who are independently rich.
It would be largely a machine, a party machine, selecting the nominees. Although it's with those three states, the whole process, as far as the caucuses are concerned, we were talking about this off camera. The Iowa caucuses, it's a weird process that they have, because the two parties do it differently. The Democrats have a big room. They won't be doing it this year, but like one candidate will be represented in
Actually, they will be.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And you can actually vote like none of the above.
That's true. But see, so you've got somebody representing one of the candidates in one part of the room, and another in another. There are 1,694 precincts in the state, and 99 counties. So those precincts in the Democratic Party, they're trying to convince people to vote for them. And it could be in a church, a public school, a firehouse, somebody's home, wherever the precinct has its caucus.
And it can go on for hours.
2 to 3 hours.
And I mean, it sounds crazy when you think, but it sounds really fun.
Yeah,
I mean, if you like to argue,
it's something like
I do.
100,000 in 2008. Like 100,000 people in each party voted in the caucuses, and then about 200,000 people in New Hampshire voted in each primary.
But you're not voting for the candidate. You're voting for the precinct representative to the county convention, where a representative to the state convention will be chosen, and that's where they nominate the presidential candidate. And that doesn't happen until May.
Ironically, that's the way you elect a president, too. You actually vote for electors who go vote for you.
And when was the last time an elector did not vote for his...
Sometimes there's some protest elections. No,
there's
usually...
No, it was 2000...
I thought 72 was Nixon.
It was 2000. We had one of our electors voted for John Edwards in one of the states.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it happened in 2004 as well, but it's like one electors or two electors.
Well, the concept of the framers of the Constitution was that you'd have wise statesmen ruling over
the concept was they thought the people
they're calling it faithless electors, isn't that what it's called?
Well,
faithless electors.
Well, actually, and that's what Americans elect is aimed at.
Oh, here we go.
Well, no, Americans elect.
Set the clock.
Okay, Americans elect is a 501c4 corporation.
What's a C3 in it? C3 is like a not-for-profit, right?
Yeah, C4 is a not-for-profit super PAC.
It's also dynamite.
C4. C4. That's C4. But at C4, they did not have to disclose who donated the money. And Americans Elect is wanting to place candidates for president and vice president on the ballots of all 50 states.
They're on 16 ballots right now.
Yeah, and the board of directors can override. They're having a convention online in June, and Peter Ackerman is the CEO. He was a right-hand man for Michael Milken, who was the junk bond king in the 1980s, who went to prison, but Ackerman went on to be like dean of Tufts University Law School or something. It shows what you do if you choose your right path. But if they're on the ballot in all 50 states, they're on the ballot. And the board of directors are, if you're a voter in a state, a registered voter in any state, you can go online and register with them. And then you can vote in their convention in June. And then they're going to put their people on the ballot. But the board of directors of the corporation can override any vote at the convention.
I think it'll be interesting to who they nominate. Because if they nominate someone like Michael Bloomberg, who could arguably draw votes from both sides, Mayor Michael Bloomberg
Could spend $1 billion of his own money.
He's got tons of wealth. He previously wrote out a run in a Democrat or Republican primary.
Squeezes out quarters.
By the way, he had
But if they
sexual harassment threats against him. He
But-
got around it. Herman Cain did.
But if they nominate someone to the right, like Gary Johnson, or like Buddy Roemer, like Ron Paul, you could see that suck away votes that would otherwise go to the Republican. As polling from Gallup has shown that Ron Paul would draw some votes from Barack Obama, some votes from Republicans, some people would vote anyway.
And
But I think it'd be very interesting.
or they could,
Or they could nominate a joke and get like 2 votes total.
Donald Trump was talking about trying to get
He's
the
not going
Americans
to run.
elect.
He's not going to run.
Well, there's a thing
he
to be
does this
said.
every 2 years.
There's something to be said for someone without a brain, and
He doesn't have money though.
I know he has neither brain nor money.
And he likes to say he's
But he has celebrity.
super duper billionaire. but
Americans
needs
love
that-
celebrities.
he needs that TV show.
Well, and he's got
That's why
that
the
hair
Kardashians
down.
are. I mean, he's a Kardashian. That's what he is. He's the 12th Kardashian. I mean, people
Not as
people
good-looking
love.
as
Well, not
Kardashian.
yet. And he's got worse hair, but people.
Definitely got worse there.
People really. I shouldn't talk about hair.
I don't think any of those shows.
But you said that. No, I think that you've been really good on this. You talked about who has the best organization. And really Mitt Romney and Ron Paul have the best organization of all the candidates.
And because
So
they've been running for several years.
Once we get past these early primaries, it's going to be them. Santorum doesn't really have much of an organization. I mean, Mike Delph is campaigning for him out there.
So is Mike Pence, by the way. He didn't mention
really?
him
Mike
in the
Pence?
blog.
I missed Mike Pence.
Well, or look
that
at
makes me,
Melissa.
Yeah,
that
Newt
makes me
Gingrich-
like Mike Pence even less now.
Newt Gingrich was on the book tour until early December. He wasn't a serious candidate until just now.
But
And
you've been extremely good on this on your blog, and you kind of look at who has the best organization. Could it be Ron Paul and Mitt Romney to Indiana in May? I mean, maybe. I doubt it.
I think Rick Perry-
Romney knocks him out.
I think Rick Perry and Michelle Bachmann are 2 people you shouldn't count out at this stage. Rick Perry has Texas money. He's got a bunch of funds that he still has to spend. Yes, he's recovered from back surgery and is literally on drugs.
And he gave one of the best
but once
intoxicated speeches I've ever heard.
Live free or die.
We're going to make
I'm
predictions
sure
on
you
Iowa.
the pew every week. But, sorry.
No,
We're
Rick
gonna
Perry
make-
could win Iowa.
We're going to make predictions on Iowa. Or do we have?
Go ahead.
All right. I will predict Ron Paul will win. Romney will finish second. Santorum will finish third.
Ron Paul wins. Mitt Romney shortly behind, and in a distant third, Newt Gingrich.
I think Ron Paul wins, but I think Mitt Romney is close, and I think Romney does the whole Obama, I finished second, but I still kind of won speech, and I think that'll help him.
I think it's going to be tough to call between Ron Paul and Mitt Romney. Santorum, though, I think is closing, and so it's going to be pretty much a dead heat. Key factor is going to be people are going to be confused between Ron Paul and Les Paul, and so the music's
Ron Paul.
There you go.
Who is the most likely to do the Dean Scream on election night? I say it's Rick Perry.
We're out of time. We're literally out of time. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. like Lawrence and speak.